In the small town of Maple Ridge, Virginia, school days were filled with the laughter of innocent children and the quiet tragedies of adolescence. Among them was Emily Carter, a tall, gangly girl with curious green eyes and an artistic soul. She was the kind of girl who drew galaxies on the margins of her notebooks and dreamed of distant cities while sitting under the school oak tree. But to the boys in her class, she was Crane Girl, a cruel nickname inspired by her long limbs and awkward gait. And no one wielded that name more often than Jake Wilson. Jake was every bit the golden boy, messy blonde hair, a grin that got him out of homework, and the athletic flair that made teachers and parents swoon. To Emily, he was a contradiction. Her first crush, the one she imagined holding hands with at the school dance, but also her first heartbreak, because he made her feel small, laughed with the others when she tripped, and always called her Crane Girl loud enough for the hallway to hear. Years passed. High school came with its new lockers, fresh faces, and a bittersweet air of reinvention. Emily transferred to Jefferson High for her junior year, carrying the hope of a blank slate. She had grown into herself, still tall, still thoughtful, but now with confidence stitched into her voice and a subtle defiance in her step. And then, on the first day in the buzzing school cafeteria, she saw him. Jake Wilson, leaner now, older but unmistakably the same boy who once ruled recess and hallways. Their eyes locked across the room, and for a moment the chatter and noise faded. Emily felt a jolt, half warning, half wonder. Jake blinked, did a double take, and then offered a slow, almost sheepish smile. He remembered her, every part of her. Not long after, Emily met Miles Bennett. It happened in the library, both reaching for the same worn copy of The Great Gatsby. He had a vintage camera slung across his shoulder, hair that looked permanently wind-tousled, and a habit of quoting books with romantic abandon. Miles became an unexpected constant in her new life, a quiet observer who saw more than he said, who made her laugh without trying too hard. Emily wasn't supposed to care anymore. She had outgrown Jake Wilson, or so she thought. Yet every time he passed by her locker or lingered near her table in the cafeteria, something stirred inside her. He never called her by that old nickname again. Instead, he offered small things: a shared pencil in class, a nod in the hallway, the occasional, "Hey, how've you been?" He looked different now, more thoughtful, a little less sure of himself. But old wounds don't heal with glances. Miles Bennett, on the other hand, had become her quiet place. With his vintage camera and dog-eared books, he brought steadiness to her whirlwind. He listened when she talked about art and made playlists with songs that matched her moods. Sometimes they'd sit in the courtyard, not speaking, just sketching and snapping photos, comfortable in their silence. Jake noticed. Emily knew he did. One Friday evening during the school's fall festival, the three of them collided. Emily was helping Miles at the photo booth when Jake walked by. He paused, watching her laugh as she fixed a crooked banner. When Miles reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, something in Jake's expression changed. He turned away, jaw tight. Emily saw it all. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her heart felt pulled in two directions, between the boy who had once broken her spirit and the one now gently piecing it back together. She didn't know what she wanted, but she knew this. Something had shifted. Quietly. Completely. Emily woke up each morning with two names in her head. One belonged to a boy who once teased her into silence. The other belonged to someone who had learned to read her without asking questions. The confusion gnawed at her like the slow unraveling of a thread she couldn't trace back to its beginning. Jake wasn't the same boy from middle school. He no longer laughed at her. He sought her out, not to mock, but to ask how her painting was going, or to tell her he liked her mural by the gym. He walked beside her after class, not too close, not too far, always waiting, as if he didn't know how to step back into her world without breaking something. But forgiveness didn't come easy. Emily remembered how it felt to be laughed at while tying her shoes, to hear "Crane Girl" shouted down the hall when she dropped her books. It had shaped the girl she was now, The quiet strength, the cautious smile, the need to hide pieces of herself even when someone looked at her kindly. And then there was Miles. Kind, steady Miles. He had become her safety net. His friendship had grown into something deeper without ever needing to be named. He left Polaroids of her on her locker, snapshots of her laughing mid-sentence or painting with her hair in a messy bun. He never asked for more, but his eyes always lingered just a second too long. That winter, everything unraveled. Emily, overwhelmed by the tension she carried around Jake, decided to take control. She started leaning closer to Miles in public. She laughed louder when he told a joke and touched his arm casually, letting the moments linger. Part of her did it out of genuine affection, but a hidden part wanted Jake to see, to wonder, to ache, like she had all those years ago, and Jake noticed. His reactions were subtle at first, a flicker of something in his eyes, a quiet withdrawal. But then he started spending time with Lexi Martin, the co-captain of the cheer squad. Lexi was sunshine and sugar, with her polished nails and easy smile. Soon, rumors swirled. Jake and Lexi were a thing. Emily told herself it didn't matter, that she'd made her choice. But one night at the winter dance, she saw them together. Jake stood under the shimmering lights, arm around Lexi's waist. He wasn't even looking at her, and that hurt the most. Emily left the gym early, her breath sharp in the cold night air, her heart louder than the music still playing behind her. She walked until her feet ached, the echo of laughter trailing behind. The game she'd started had spiraled. What began as a defense became a dagger, and now she didn't know who she'd wounded more, Jake, Miles, or herself. Emily stopped sitting by the window in art class. She stopped waiting in the library before the first bell. She stopped answering Miles's texts and took longer routes to avoid the hallway where Jake's locker stood. Silence became her refuge. Jake didn't chase her. Not this time. He slipped back into the background, showing up to class, laughing with friends, walking down the halls like she was a stranger again. It hurt more than she expected. And with every day that passed, her heart grew heavier with things she didn't know how to say. Even Miles pulled back, sensing something broken in her that he couldn't fix with film or friendship. He didn't push. He just stopped waiting. Winter melted into a reluctant spring. Graduation crept closer and Emily filled her sketchbooks, with cities she hadn't visited, faces she hadn't seen. One afternoon, while cleaning the art room, Lexi Martin approached her. It wasn't a confrontation, just a soft, unexpected truth. "He never looked at me the way he looked at you," Lexi said, hands folded. "I don't think he ever really saw me." Emily didn't know what to say. "He still watches you, you know," Lexi added, "even when you're not looking." That night, Emily found the Polaroids Miles had taken of her, still tucked inside her notebook. She studied each one, the way her smile tilted, how her eyes crinkled, how she seemed unguarded, unaware. She missed the girl in those pictures. She missed the boy who had taken them. And maybe she even missed the boy who once made her feel invisible, because now he made her feel too much. The last week of school arrived with humid air and countdowns drawn in chalk outside classrooms. Emily was finishing a canvas alone in the art room when she heard the door creak open. She didn't turn. She knew that voice before it even spoke. "You still paint in silence," Jake said. She kept cleaning her brushes. "I never said I was sorry," he added. Emily stopped. Jake took a few steps closer. "I called you Crane Girl because I was too stupid to admit I liked you. It was easier to laugh than to feel something. I was a coward." She looked up slowly, her eyes unreadable. "You hurt me." "I know. I became someone else. Because of you," she whispered. "Stronger, sharper." Jake nodded. "And I stayed the same, until I saw you again." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a tattered notebook. "I started this when you came back into my life. Notes, thoughts, things I wish I'd said instead of the things I did. I drew you once in history class. You were looking out the window like you were somewhere else entirely." Emily opened the notebook. His handwriting covered pages, messy but full of effort. There were sketches of her profile, song lyrics circled, even a half-finished poem. I broke things I didn't understand, Jake said. But I want to understand now. The real you, not the memory I used to run from. Emily looked up, her voice barely more than breath. What if I'm not her anymore? Then let me meet the woman she became. Their second beginning wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with fanfare or declarations in crowded hallways. Instead, it came slowly, like the first warmth of spring after a long winter. Tentative, gentle, real. Jake started meeting Emily after school. Sometimes they walked in silence, other times they spoke about everything but the past. He asked her about her art, and she asked about the parts of him she never knew. His parents' divorce. The pressure of always being the guy everyone liked. The loneliness that followed him, even when surrounded. Emily let her walls down, one layer at a time. She showed him her sketchbooks, let him read the poem she'd written after the winter dance, and laughed when he said her handwriting was impossibly pretty. There were no games now, just presence. Jake met her parents over lasagna and nervously complimented her mother's choice in kitchen tiles. Emily met his younger sister, who adored her instantly. They went for late-night drives, windows down, music loud, no destination in mind. He held her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him. One afternoon, Jake surprised her with a gift, a leather-bound journal with the words, "Crane Girl No More" embossed on the cover. Inside were pages still, blank, waiting to be filled with the future. "I want this to be your story now," he said. "Not the one I ruined, the one we build." Emily cried, not out of sadness but release. She understood now. He had been a boy shaped by insecurity, who'd used cruelty as armor. But this man before her, was trying. Not to erase what had been, but to grow beyond it. And she was no longer the girl who flinched at her own shadow. When he kissed her for the first time beneath the oak tree where she once sat alone, it didn't feel like redemption. It felt like recognition. Their story didn't stay quiet for long. In the halls of Jefferson High, whispers turned into wide-eyed stares. Jake Wilson, the boy who once tossed cruel nicknames like paper planes, now walked hand in hand with the girl he used to tease. But there was no irony in their closeness, only clarity. Emily became a symbol, not of revenge, but of reinvention. Teachers noticed the shift in classroom dynamics. The quiet kids spoke more. The popular ones joked less at others' expense. One teacher even started a campaign called Names Matter, encouraging students to share what they wished people called them, and what they wanted to leave behind. Even Miles, ever the silent chronicler, captured the new atmosphere. He snapped a photo of Emily and Jake sitting beneath the oak tree, heads leaned together, not posing, just existing. The school yearbook printed it with a single word underneath: growth. No one called her Crane Girl anymore. She was Emily. And Jake, once the boy who followed the crowd, had become someone who stood apart from it. Their love didn't just heal their story. It changed the story the school told about who people could become. On the morning Jake left for college, Emily placed a letter in his backpack pocket, folded carefully between his notebooks. "I once thought you only saw the worst of me. But maybe, even then, you were trying to understand what you couldn't. I forgive the boy who hurt me, because he led me to the man who helped me find my voice. And maybe I needed to break to rebuild stronger. If you ever forget who you are, read this and remember, someone out there sees you, all of you, and, still chooses you. Always come back to me." He read it on the bus, and smiled the whole ride. Years later, Emily Carter Wilson sat under the same oak tree, now weathered but proud, watching her daughters race through the golden leaves. Jake lay on the grass beside her, sketching with one of their twins sprawled across his chest. Life had not been perfect, but it had been real. Built on honesty, healing, and time. Emily sometimes wondered what would have happened if she had never transferred schools. If Jake had never looked at her that way again, if Miles hadn't handed her that copy of The Great Gatsby with a smile. But love, she had learned, isn't always grand entrances or perfect timing. Sometimes it's second chances, a name said differently. A silence finally broken. Once, she was the girl who flinched when her name was called. Now she answered with pride because she was no longer Crane Girl, she was Emily, loved, seen, chosen, always.